Pleasure Island Family Theme Park. See the magic. Ride the magic. Feel the magic. Pleasure Island Family Theme Park, Cleethorpes. Come and discover the magic for yourself.
Pleasure Island Family Theme Park was located in Cleethorpes, North East Lincolnshire, England. It sat on the former Cleethorpes Marineland Zoo, and even before that, it was located on the land of a stock car racing stadium.
No tearjerker this, just that a dolphin like Moby needs constant attention on the journey to the new Marineland at Cleethorpes.
The zoo was founded in 1966 by Pentland Hick and was operated as a satellite zoo to Flamingo Park. Flamingo Park was established in 1959, also by Pentland Hick, and located in North Yorkshire. Both of these sites were owned by Scotia Leisure.
At the Flamingo Park Zoo in Yorkshire, Cuddles the killer whale tries to act human and behave herself when Geraldine Watmore, her American trainer, is around.
It was actually the first site in Europe to combine a zoo and amusement park rides when it started adding them in the 1970s. The park underwent a revamp in the 1970s to become Flamingo Land. The site was then sold to Robert Gibb, a former director of Scotia Leisure, in 1978. The zoo in Cleethorpes featured 2 pools which housed sea lions and at times offered dolphin shows among many other different animals. The zoo operated in 1977 until it was closed. In the years before its closing, the park had been turned into a safari park and replaced many of its real animals with fiberglass versions of them. The site was then sold to Pleasurewood, a division of RKF Entertainment, who had recently acquired a controlling interest in the Pleasurewood Hills theme park in Suffolk. It was announced a new theme park will be built as a sister park to Pleasurewood Hills, and construction began on the new theme park in the 1980s. In the early 1990s, RKF Entertainment went into receivership, and construction of the park was put on hold. The site of the under construction theme park was sold to Robert Gibb, who is now the managing director of Flamingo Land. He continued to develop the site as a theme park, which became known as Pleasure Island.
I started with the company Flamingo Land in 1992. In North Yorkshire, and then I came to Pleasure Island when we was just in the construction part of the park in 1993.
And the Pleasure Island theme park was open on the 27th of May 1993. The entrance fee in its opening year was £7, and the park featured 6 different themed areas. Old England, themed around, well, England. This area contained the park entrance and was the first location you would see when entering, as well as another small area themed around Spain, Morocco, Kiddie's Kingdom, and White Knuckle Valley. Normally I would go around the park and go through each of these lands and the attractions within it, but this time I'm going to go through the attractions by category, starting with the roller coasters, so we may be jumping back and forth through time a little bit here. In fact, the ride Pleasure Island, considered its flagship ride even in 2015, was a standard Vekoma Boomerang.
This is the Boomerang, it's our flagship roller coaster ride, so it's the biggest ride on the park,
which remained unchanged from the park's opening in 1993. Situated in White Knuckle Valley at the back of the park, this version was similar to the Missile located at the American Adventure theme park, which interestingly when it closed was relocated to the original sister park for Pleasure Island, Pleasurewood Hills, and it still operates there today. Pleasure Island's version though was removed after the park closed and returned to the Netherlands, where it is being refurbished before heading to Indonesia. So when a park's flagship coaster remains the same for over 20 years, and you can kind of understand the issue that Pleasure Island faced and the cause of its eventual closure. The second roller coaster, Mini Mine Train, also opened with the park, a standard Vekoma Roller Skater Junior coaster located in the Africa section of the park. This family coaster travelled twice around the track and was mildly themed as an African mine train, whatever that is. At one point, a dinosaur theming element was part of the ride, but it was removed at some point during its lifetime. Again, this ride was returned to Vekoma in the Netherlands when the park closed and will be heading to Indonesia. The third roller coaster was called the Go-Gator, a kids' alligator-themed ride. It also opened with the park. Also at that time, another roller coaster which operated in the park for just 2 years was called Four-Man Bob, a roller coaster with trains like bobsleighs. It was replaced with the opening of the Crazy Loop in 1996, which again only lasted in the park until 2002 when it was replaced with Pendulous. So the roller coasters at this park left a lot to be desired. So what did the park have? Well, some pretty unique flat rides actually. One of the first flat rides was Terror Rack, a Fabry topspin attraction, which didn't feature water like most of them. Many complained about this ride though due to its old age that it was extremely uncomfortable.
I wouldn't go on this one, no, I'm a little bit old for this one now, I think. It's in its name, it's a Terror Rack, it's terrifying.
During the 2000s, Pleasure Island continued to add a variety of interesting flat rides, starting in the year 2000 with Hyper Blaster, an S&S 90-foot shot tower.
One of the buttons is quite sensitive, and when the operator is holding it down too long, it won't let the ride go, it faults the ride. So we've had to really look at that and how sensitive that button is, and the guys now know how long they have to press the button for and when to release the button. So hopefully, keep fingers crossed, the train now going ahead and the ride's okay.
Perhaps the most unique flat ride in the park was Alakazam, a ride that many either loved or hated. It was a Huss Flyaway, a variation of the Huss Enterprise, which is personally one of my least favourite rides. It was the only one located in the UK and at a height of 72 feet. Not for the claustrophobic, you laid down and the restraints sandwiched you into the ride before spinning you through the air. After its closure, it was relocated to a park in Chile. Next up, in 2003, was Pendulous, a Huss frisbee ride themed around a clock. One of the most popular rides in the park actually, and it was relocated to Flambard's theme park in Cornwall on the park's closure. Hydro Max was a Fabry booster which arrived in 2006, standing at 130 feet. This is another ride that can be found at many travelling fairs. 2008 saw the addition of the Obliterator. It moved to the park from Flamingo Land, where it was known as the Circulator, and is now at a park in the Czech Republic. Actually, a couple of rides switched between the two parks, as the owners found that most people only visited one of their two parks. The final flat ride added was for just 1 year. Voltar, added in 2015, was a Vekoma double swinging inverter, and it was also relocated from Flamingo Land under the name Skyflyer. Throughout the park were a mixture of family and children's rides, but two others really stood out, the park's two dark rides. Tommy Tinkerboo's Sweet Adventure was based on the park's mascot, Tommy Tinkerboo. This indoor dark water ride has been part of the park since its opening. This colourful adventure took you through many different scenes as you see Tommy Tinkerboo creating sweets in his factory. Not many well-themed fun dark rides even exist in the UK, and even less now after this park's closure. One thing to note though is that the ride's soundtrack may sound slightly familiar to any Disney fans. Moving on, who doesn't love a good ghost train? No, not this kind of ghost train. A classic dark ride ghost train. The jungle ride took guests along a track through a jungle. It was eventually closed and the ride was rethemed as Shriexville. The ride still featured the Jeep-themed cars and the Skull Cave of the previous ride, but the rest was completely rethemed. It featured 6 scenes, including a graveyard, quarry, and a chamber of doors, as well as a themed queue line. This ride by many was labelled one of the best rides in England before its closure. The park spent a good amount of money on retheming this ride, and it definitely showed. The park also featured different shows along with its selection of rides, including a sea lion show, which was actually a continuation of the show which was located here when it was a zoo. After the park opened, unfortunately just 2 years later, Robert Gibb passed away in a car accident, and the ownership of the two parks was transferred over to his son, Gordon Gibb, as well as his 2 sisters, Vicky and Melanie. Gordon was only 18 at the time.
I was part of the family who owned the 2 parks. My father started Flamingo Park in 1978 and he purchased the land here in 1991. The park opened in 1993, so as you can imagine, it's been very much a part of my life for as long as I can remember.
Melanie Woods began working in the Flamingo Land marketing department and eventually became a director of Flamingo Land in 2000. She would then become responsible for the Cleethorpes park. In 2010, she had taken her goal of taking ownership of the park. Separate from the rest of the family company, now operated and directed by Melanie Wood, this marked the end between the association between Pleasure Island and Flamingo Land, and this was the first time that the park had to be financially viable by itself. On the 14th of April 2010, when the park was expected to be open, Pleasure Island was actually closed. Staff and guests arrived to the park to find a sign attached apologising for the closure, and 200 employees had their work contracts terminated. Reports suggest that it was due to the breakdown in negotiations about the park's ownership during the separation of the two companies. It did reopen though on the 1st of May 2010, and the staff were offered their jobs back.
In its heyday, there was a 250,000 people coming through the gates, which was fantastic. That was early days, that was in the late 1990s, early 2000s.
The park had plans to increase visitors to 250,000 per year within 5 years when it reopened, as well as lengthening the park's season. The park at the time was averaging around 180,000 guests a year, and a 5-year plan was to add new attractions every year to increase this. Later in the same year though, Melanie Woods said that they hadn't had a good year and visitors were down 23%.
Unfortunately, it's not quite how things are now. We're down to about 125,000, which is a sign of the times, in all honesty. It's happening across the industry, but we're hoping that we can improve on that year on year, and we're just doing our best to try and encourage more people through the gates.
The visitor numbers to the park did not recover, and the park's permanent closure was announced in September 2016. The park operated until the end of the season and ended with a final firework event on the 29th of October.
And also, you know, to keep up with your competitors, if they're doing it, you have to be seen to do it. It's just the way things are, you know, and it's tough. Nothing comes cheap. You don't get much for under $250,000. And if we want to compete with the big boys, you're talking £1 million plus, which, you know, you have to have a good year to do that.
75% of the park's rides were sold, and what wasn't sold was left. Prestige Auctions of Grimsby announced it will be holding a 2-day special auction on Wednesday, March 7th and 8th, 2018 to sell the remaining assets, which includes anything from park signs to entire theme park rides, including most things inside the Tinkerboo water ride. If you want to take a look at the list of items, I've included the link to the auction in the description below. And as it's open to the public, anyone can go along and browse the auction items. So if you're watching this before the auction next week, be sure to go along and see if you can pick up some part of this park's history. Even the park's 114-year-old carousel is up for auction.
Things are getting better. The general feeling is a little bit more confidence, and let's hope that, you know, people start to think about days out, start to think about spending money. You know, I hope and I pray that Pleasure Island will still be here, you know, 20, 30 years time, but at the moment we're very much year to year.
Pleasure Island was not the grandest theme park in the UK. Nor was it the best themed or even the most thrilling. It was a fun place to visit for the whole family, but unfortunately it was unable to keep up in today's economy. It is sad when any theme park closes its doors, especially after 23 years, and the fate of this seaside town theme park is the same as so many other smaller UK parks. At least this time though, there's a chance for the fans to own a piece of the park's history, and the rides won't just be left to rot like the fate of so many other parks. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe, and give us a follow on Twitter if you want up-to-date information on upcoming videos and content. If you're heading to the Pleasure Beach Island auction, please do let us know, especially because who wouldn't want to own one of these things? We will see you next time.